Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Testing Peers. Today we have got money on our minds and we're going to talk about training budgets and how we plan to spend it. And we're going to be looking at different values and how we might actually spend that in a different way, depending on how much we have. We have my wonderful co-hosts with me tonight. I have Russell Craxford.
Hello.
Chris Armstrong.
Hello, Mr. Moneymaker.
And a really quite regular co-host recently, Tara Walton.
Hello.
And we can't have a special guest without them offering their fantastic ideas of banter. So over to Tara.
Oh, banter is always the hardest one because you ask me and then my brain goes blank. But I've got a good one for you today. I don't know if we've ever talked about this before. Heroes or villains, guys?
For what purpose?
Oh, yeah. Depends on the context.
It's always
movies?
key, right?
Or would I want to be a hero or a villain?
Oh, well, Russell, I know deep in your heart you're a villain.
That's just what I'm naturally drawn towards. Natural talent. That's all.
Absolutely not true.
I
But
break things by looking at them. It's got to be an evil trait.
oh no, that's just part of the QA DNA.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're all by default necessarily evil, aren't we?
You see, I prefer villain because they seem to have much more fun. Okay, they get the comeuppance, but you can get away with so much more. Whereas heroes, you have to be a bit of a you
You
have
always
to
escape for the sequel, don't you, as well? So you
Yes.
get multiple go.
play by a
I
different
thought we're
actor.
talking about sequels too. Okay. Chris looks very thoughtful.
Chris is going to be a hero.
No, he's not. He's
I was thinking about this through the lens of the TV show Traitors, where there's a very clear divide between traitors and faithful. And I think you could have a lot more fun in that show as a traitor because you're the only ones there that know what's going on and who isn't. So in that sense, the fun is in knowing that you're doing those things, although it leans a lot into like a bit of a pathological existence, which I'm not sure I really want. But I think in reality, it's a bit of a like a neo kind of thing in the sense that you want to be an anti-hero, like be a cool bad guy, but you're really popular and your kind of heart's in the sort of right place, but you're still a bad guy and all those things.
The means justify the end.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're
the
outside.
other way
Obviously, you operate outside the law because you're too much of a cool guy who can't be held with the red tape that society's trying to put around you.
so you're Batman.
Mm. Did you just say Batman?
Or the Joker. He's had a film all about him. So is Harley Quinn as well, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tara, are you hero or villain?
So I will always have a soft spot in my heart for the villains because I think very often they are the hero that has just been pushed too far.
Well, there's a whole Incredibles thing about that, isn't it? The
Yes.
Incredibles first villain was exactly that.
I always loved in the D&D realm, there's an entire grid that you can fall into, and quite often the people that are so far into the lawful good alignment of I always follow the rules and for the good of all end up doing more harm than good. So I always fall in that kind of context is key and what's your ultimate goal kind of
I was always chaotic good.
explains a lot.
Vouch for the chaotic anyway.
That part.
Excellent. Well, after chaos, shall we go on to normal service as well? So we're going to talk about training budgets, and we're going to look at different levels of training budget. So should we put the first cap at 100, either $100 or £100?
Well, let's do £100. That's a bit more.
Well, how much is that worth in dollars then for our American audience?
120, depending on how Trump and our own prime minister's causing chaos in the markets.
It may well change in the time between recording and doing those bits, but I think it's fair to say the sort of premise is I'm a tester. I've got a training budget to spend. I've got 100 money, and I'd like to spend it what would you advise? How would you go about it? How would you go about finding out the right things and convincing your purse string holder that this is what you should do?
Put it like that. It sounds easy, Chris.
Yeah.
Just makes it sound so easy. I think the hardest part of that is finding something that'll give you any bang for your buck under that amount, right? Everything these days is add a zero to that at least. So how do you go about finding something when you're given that tiny little budget of congratulations, we gave you a whole $100?
I was going to be evil and say, what about if you've got zero budget? Should we start there rather than 100? Because there's actually a lot of good free resources.
Or is that where we finish?
Or do they go into the 100 one? Because they're under £100 still. Yeah, now I've lost you.
Well, as somebody who creates free education, I can say that there is a lot of really good stuff out there that you don't have to pay for.
Yeah, there is.
We built a whole training academy based on Python Academy, based on freely available resources.
I've got a first resource that I would recommend before you even know what to choose. Deep Teaching Solutions by Barbara Oakley and Terence Senovsky. I'm sorry I butchered your name. They have a free course on Coursera that's called Learning How to Learn. Because let's face it, we don't all learn the same way. So it might be books, webinars, courses, conferences, hands-on tutorials, all those things. Find out what actually works for you. And that course is free. That's really useful to be able to sort of do that. I was recommended by Micah Brinkoff years ago, and I bookmarked it because I thought it was such a useful course to have.
So have you actually done it?
I did, but so long ago, I can't remember any of the tools, so I think I need to take it again. But what I uncovered really was hands-on stuff. I have to be actually making stuff. I don't like the theory is all lovely, but if there's no outcome from the theory, I won't do it. It means nothing to me. Something that just ends with a multiple choice to pass, I am not motivated by personally. It has to be something where I can actually create something at the end or have something tangible from the end of it.
See, I think you've highlighted a good point. I think you do need to understand your learning style first. But with 100 or just over $100 or £100, the first thing I would think of is either a subscription to a Coursera course itself, which may be a bit more than that, possibly, but also buying books or subscribing to a podcast or something. But on that cheap, then yeah, absolutely. Chris is holding up Explore It. You can really increase lots of skills. Python as exploratory testing itself. And again, you can get books that have, especially if it's language based, you do actually build things. It is more practically based. So you do have that ability to actually do that. And you can follow obviously things on the internet as well. And the internet is your friend, but it's finding the right things to actually do with that. So I think you can still do a lot. And I think this is the point of why we sort of put a small amount of money in. First of all, you can actually achieve a lot with a small budget. You don't have to spend the world. And as Russell said, there are still free resources out there. So actually you can do things on the cheap. They may not all be the best. So you need to choose wisely for that free, but absolutely use recommendations from the community. But you don't have to spend a large budget and go to those, really expensive courses and conferences to achieve a lot.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up books. I know one of the things that helps me learn the best is actually walking away from the computer and not having the distractions of being able to open a new tab or I'll just answer that email real quick. When I've got a book and I can go to a different room and scribble in the margins and come back and maybe do a hands-on exercise, but I can separate myself from all the distractions. that is where I get the most value. It's why I keep buying more books to put behind me.
You're all wise people. That's what I'm going to say. No, yeah, there's lots of different things. I think the thing we should probably tell our podcast listeners is some of these resources we will try and put links into our podcast notes so that you don't have to try and listen to them all, and hopefully you can just read that to find them. But there is an amazing array of resources that are free, from the blogs, LinkedIn posts, to kind of like things like Automation University. That was, I've forgotten. I want to say, who was that did that?
Appletools.
Yeah, there is kind of like Free Code Academy. You can even do some of the Harvard computer science courses, for example, for free on edX. I think it's called edX, edx.org. And some of those are free if you don't want to like do formal certification in them, but just want to do the course and stuff like that. There's loads of learning out there that is cheap as chips and of high quality. It's sometimes you're paying for the certificate rather than actually the learning, which is, to Chris's point about getting some practicality out of it, not always the most important thing. It can be important if you need to demonstrate on a CV or application that you've got a skill that you've got no experience in, because it shows you've learned something and ticks a box and manages a risk. But if you're already in a role and all the rest of it and want to enhance your skills, advance your skills, the certification side of it is often less valuable because it's experience that normally is valued more. But yeah, there's lots of books. Explore It is a fantastic one. I was just looking through it. The sort of books I would going to recommend were things like the Phoenix Project, Goal, those sorts of wider how organizations work, system thinking type style, as well as the Explore It and books of that ilk. I think coding wise, there's a lot of those sort of learning materials that are free or cheap. There's Udemy, there's online platforms that you can pay for, subscriptions for, things like that you can go down as well, that give you a multitude of courses which you can select from. I wouldn't particularly call out a set course, but there's lots of options of those ilks that will cost you less than $100. And I'd happily say, well, if it's £10 a month, $10 a month, I'll have it for 10 months, and please, if I've only got $100. I'd accept that, and then I know I have to plan which 10 months of the year I can use it. I have no idea how much they do cost, by the way, but I understand they will be under $100 a month, unless you've got business memberships. But yeah, that's what I would go down with the low budget.
Hopefully, a lot of it's got to do with what you want to do, what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to increase your profile, your portfolio? Is there something you're going to be working on that's coming up at work, or something you need to learn? Technologies, styles, coaching, promotions, all these things. Like you say, systems thinking is a great place to go if you're beginning to endeavor into a more sort of holistic, strategic world. There's things like the Culture Code book. There's some really, really good, challenging stuff there. Really, really interesting, actually, out there. And a lot of it is what's your motivation? Like, if it's just something that's new and on trend, that's always going to change. But there's some really good old stuff. Like, I would say sometimes some of the older approaches, older texts, older languages and stuff have got such solid foundation that they don't yet belong in a museum. They deserve to be things that we still study. Jerry Weinberg's got a lot of good quality stuff. There's still a bunch of old blog posts that I say old, they might be a decade old, that I still reference and share with people about useful things, because I still think the foundational truth in those things are good. And the new and shiny is really important, but sometimes those foundational elements behind things are really important.
Yeah, you've got lots of things online for service providers like AWS, Provar, all these sorts of companies will actually provide learning materials for their tools, often is the case these days, especially free, sometimes behind walls, certification especially. There's lots of that stuff. But what I can't understand is, how long have we been talking? 5-10 minutes? Not one of us has said the Testing Peers conference for under £100, because it's 30 quid. I'm sorry, but I'm just surprised that none of us have self-reflected our own conference.
We're trying not to be shills for ourselves, Russell. Maybe we can have an outro.
I will also
was I meant
say,
to let Tara mention it? Was I? Sorry.
It's 30 quid for you, but it also comes with a $1,400 airplane ticket for me.
Yes, that's true.
So the GoFundMe will be live.
I don't know about everyone's company, but my company has a separate travel budget from learning budget. So actually, the £30 would come out of the £100 learning budget. Travel would come out of travel and subsistence budget, which is a whole separate budget system. But
That's
not
a
every
really good
company's the
point.
same. But anyway,
No, I
but
see
you're
our
right.
company,
It's not close
our
to
company isn't the same. So our learning budget would include the travel and the hotel as well.
Yeah.
So,
So that's not learning. So that seems weird.
it wouldn't, yeah, it wouldn't.
You couldn't fly with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That, if the short term, I have to put in this much time and energy into learning something like going to a conference or reading a book or, digesting a full podcast even can be a little overwhelming. I really like things like the test sphere cards too, because I can pull one out, read over it, go, oh, I want to learn more about that, or just remind myself of something that I might have forgotten over the years. And that's a really cheap, just little tool that you can, get by on your learning budget and say, this would be a really nice reference for us to have.
Cool. So should we up the budget now? Should we up the budget to 500? Or do you think a bit more than that?
500 units. Yeah. No, I think 500 is a good
units. What you saying?
Almost
500 money.
$600
That's what we're
in the
calling it.
US.
We're like in Monopoly.
It's
where
like
we've
Monopoly
just-
money. Yeah.
Brings up a good point too. A lot of times if it's, you've got a budget of 500, but it's 510, like you could go over a little bit. I've never known anybody that's absolutely put their
you
foot
can offer
down
to
and
pay a little
said,
bit more yourself.
yeah, but usually they'll go, oh, okay. Like, I understand. It's so close. So there's some wiggle room in there. Don't just say, oh, I guess I can't do it. Ask.
Yeah,
Always
there's an
worth
expression
asking.
where I'm from, which is shy Ben's getting out, which is basically if you don't ask, you don't get. So try and
Love
ask
it.
if you can, because you're guaranteed to know unless you ask. You ask, you might get it no, but if you don't ask, you've already given yourself.
Don't ask, don't get.
So what can we do with 500?
Well, 500, you could definitely get to like a domestic event, like an in-person event. And, Russell's alluded to conference stuff already. I think it's important, like the four of us and a lot of Testing Peers folks the reason why we put the effort into making PeersCon was because we have connected with some amazing humans. We have been challenged, we have learned, we have gotten new ideas, we have come away from events inspired, led to do more things as a result of attending those things. You don't have to aim for the stars with the biggest and brightest conferences you see, but there are meetups, there are local conferences, there are amazing things where, look, I hate the term thought leader, but there are people who are putting ideas out there into the world for you to be interacting with and sharing with. And those people are your people, potentially people that you can resonate with, challenge yourselves, collaborate with. And a £500 budget could get you to a local event, something that's going on there, like it cover your transport, it could cover some overnight accommodation, potentially some food or a ticket. Those things, I would recommend everyone give it a go. It's terrifying to be in a room of people you don't know, but do you know what? You might just meet some of the best people you've ever met.
Or you might meet people you hate, but hey, you've tried.
We're trying to sell it on.
We've all
people,
met.
Russell,
Sorry,
come
we've
on.
all met on a conference, by the way. That's why I was saying that. Sorry, me and Chris
And
have a
now we're
love-hate
stuck
relationship.
with each other.
But you've made a very good point. There's loads of local conferences, not just on testing itself, but technologies, tools, on different things. Meetup community there's loads of, like I've mentioned our conference, but in the UK there's all sorts of free events. You've got smaller events like special interest groups, biggest ones in software testing. You've got things like the stuff that's happening in Leeds, Testatilia, things like that. You've got Ship It conferences. You've got all sorts of different conferences and events that aren't pure testing sometimes, but are actually free or low cost. So that generally they're not on your doorstep always, but they're generally within a day commute, a day travel. Not necessarily easy day travel, but sometimes you have to put a bit in to get a bit out, I guess is the point.
And I really like leadership and soft skill seminars too that you can go to that might help you with presenting big ideas to stakeholders or being able to talk in front of a room full of people, so that if maybe one day you want to speak at a conference and you're like, trying to figure out how to do that. Don't discount those things too, because that has traditionally nothing to do with testing until it does.
Everything has something to do with testing.
The other thing that you could do, we've mentioned conferences, and which are really important, but you could also buy a subscription service that could be to, actually, how much is MOT at the moment? Is that at is that under 500? Yeah. So you get into their system, and actually that now will get you the cost of a ticket to the Motocon for next year. But you could also subscribe to, we mentioned books before, but you could apply, for a course or for a subscription to a book, a specialist book repository type thing, so to allow you to get more access to larger numbers of book through subscription services and things. So there are options like that in the, for that amount of money, that would allow you to get much more information than just buying individual books.
There's also there's a lot of people trying ideas, building in public, things like Lean Pub, where a lot of people are self-publishing and breaking those things down. And if you see people doing good things and you're blessed with having some budget to throw people's way, where you can glean some wisdom, some good stuff that you can work with, but also encourage people to build, because getting a publishing deal is one thing, but self-publishing is another, and the value that can be gleaned from that can be super good. Like I've definitely lent hard into a few Lean Pub books down the years, and that's a great space to invest in. Certainly really, really pleased with that. And if you do have a bit of freedom on budget, supporting people who are creating content that you appreciate, you find useful, it can be a really good way to do it, because we talked about feedback a lot. Creating and putting stuff out in the public isn't easy. So if you've got
especially when it's on your dime.
Yeah, blessing people with that sort of stuff is a wonderful thing if you've got the opportunity. Right, so that's 500.
I was just looking at the cost. So MOT will cost £349 at £349.
Well, within budget, you can go out for a meal as well.
But for UK, but the US is it's £499.99. So you get 1 cent.
Is that including or excluding tax?
It does say plus tax as well. So you'd be slightly over. You'd be putting your hand down the back of the sofa.
If I remember correctly, though, things like Ministry of Testing and Medium usually have holiday sales. So if you're waiting to the end of the year to use your budget, it might be worth seeing if there's a discount coming up.
And again, Shy Ben's always reach out and say, you've got $499. Can they do it for that? You never know.
Yeah,
it's true.
You might not get it 2 years in a row, but you can certainly try.
Well, a lot of places, not
sometimes
only do they have
raise your budget.
Sometimes they've got a scholarship thing. Sometimes they've got opportunities to do stuff. Like there's always, like you say, there's a chance to ask and collaborate.
To quote Russell, better to ask, because they can only say no.
Always.
Let's go big now.
There's one more I wanted to point out. It's really, really important. That's going to be controversial.
Go on.
So you may not be able to pay for like a pure course, but for example, you can pay for certification of multiple different things, including things like ISTQB, AWS courses, and so on.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not the world's greatest fan of ISTQB, meaning you're a tester, but if you're trying to get into the field and do not have much practical experience, it is one of the ways, on top of other things, of partly demonstrating that you're interested and that you're doing things. And generally doing that certification, if you just do the exam in the UK, it's about 225 quid, I think, or something, via Pearson's or something like that. So you can buy a book, you do some online learning, you can speak to peers and things like that, and you could do those sorts of courses like that. I'm not saying it's a golden nugget solution to proving you're a tester. It's not. But it is something that can go onto CVs to show entry-level jobs and get people started out in careers that not having can sometimes be an obstacle for.
It's the same thing I mentioned earlier. It's that foundational level of stuff. You can't just like skip to being an expert. And that is one of those things that's going to give you
Gives you a grounding.
context.
Yeah, it gives you a grounding
give
that
you
may not all
breadth.
agree with. Yeah, but anyway, but yeah, it's something that you can pay for a book sometimes for 30 quid, and then do that. Not everyone learns like that. I appreciate, but there's lots of different things out there. The Udemy, as I mentioned before, there's lots of courses on this sort of stuff and stuff like that. People try to help people get through exams, so you could do a cheap course, pay for the exam yourself as an option if you've got a tight budget. That's an example of one anyway. Sorry, so I will now let you proceed to the next level.
You'll let me proceed. I wanted to go big now, so I was going to say your training budget is. So your training budget is $3,000.
That's not big.
That's six times bigger than the last
That's
one.
$3,000 more than I get.
Yeah.
Because
Because I don't think many companies
say,
will offer millions to do your training budget.
I was going to say there is a caveat here sometimes where your training budget is more in terms of time
I was
than
going to
money.
say, with the right justification, many places I've worked can find ways of doing it. The budget is flexible enough to allow
$3,000
for
to
things
$5,000, we'll say $3,000 to $5,000.
Yeah, I'm just thinking some security courses and other things I know are about $5,000.
Yeah,
but anyway,
they're also time.
There's time cost to all of this stuff. If an employer is letting you do training or going to conferences or events, they are giving you paid time usually to do so.
Well, where do you stand on that? If you're going to a conference, should that be work time?
If you're going to learn about your work, is it related to your work? Then yes. If you're going to a plumbing conference and you're a test engineer, I would say no. So context still matters. But yeah, if you're going to a testing IT related thing or something to enhance your skills in your workplace, then I think it is something that your employers should be contributing time towards. Anyone disagree?
And I think that is something that is falling out of vogue as we tighten our belts so often. Development of our staff is becoming a free solution. They might be willing to give you your time. You can schedule X number of hours every week that's on development, but funding is a different story. And sending you out and away from the office or completely out of reach is also another thing that I think I have struggled with in the past with, if you want to do that, take your PTO. So you got to be really careful about, what you're asking for and how many little buckets you're dipping into.
Yeah, it's like everything. Conferences are a classic one where sometimes people try and go to like 20 of them. Then you got to think about the impact of that sort of thing, because it's the time away from the business as well as the cost of the conference. You may be speaking at them, for example, but again, there's an element of, if they're paid time, then there's an expectation, there's a work benefit usually that's coming from it, an enhancement of learning or something that's coming out of it, reputational. But it is interesting because you're right, some companies are good at saying you have time, terrible at kind of letting you take it, and other way around. Some people will give you time but not budget. So it is sometimes it's a challenging thing. I was going to throw a curveball because I appreciate it's not quite the topic, but do we think, because I've seen this sort of scrum culture, I'll call it, when you often end up with one test or two testers spread or thin, that testers in particular are more loath to take time away from testing because there's always more testing you can do. There's always more code you can write, to be fair. So actually that culture of trying to get things out the door and all the rest of it accidentally puts pressure, possibly more so on testers, to help the team and then put themselves a little bit on the back burner. That team culture sometimes makes people focus on the team over your skills that will then help the team, if that makes sense. I appreciate that's slightly a side question from the theme, but initial thoughts before I
does that lend itself, and forgive me if I'm taking down a tangent here, but to lend itself to a little bit about, is it my professional development or is it my development for my company, sort of bit? Am I developing me as an individual contributor, or am I developing myself as a teammate? And sometimes the two will combine, and other times
diverge. Yeah, sometimes your learning is not relevant. So I know companies that give you a budget of £500 to spend on whatever you want. If you want to learn French, you can learn French.
But then there are other companies that stipulate it has to be for the growth of the company.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so therefore it is much more for what's important for the company rather than the individual.
So it depends on the company training culture.
Well, and I've been sent to training specifically to bring back this information for the rest of us, but we're only
Return
paying
on
for one
investment.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that. Yeah,
That's quite
that's
often.
Yeah.
just cheap, but never mind.
Yeah.
Well, unless they're training you to be a trainer as well and paying you to do those courses, then they're asking a lot. Sorry, I took us on a tangent, but it was just
Yeah.
kind of like I think there's a bit of a pressure on people in Scrum teams, especially to focus on the team goals over themselves sometimes, which causes a bit of a conflict. And I've seen it more in testers than the developers and the teams I've worked with. It's not that they don't, it's just that a developer can take a step back for a day or two without less impact than a solo
As I
tester.
said, there's usually a larger team there involved. Like you said, I think I've usually been one tester to every 6-ish developers. And so when you only have one tester that walks
alarming.
away for 2-3 days, it's
But-
devastating.
And that's sometimes why
a lot of
I
pressure.
guess managers push back on time off. Anyway, we're going away from where we just spend your budget, but I was just thought of an interesting side tangent to Chris's point.
So big budget can be. We've talked about events, and there are some big and exciting events that exist, right? And I think everyone should have the opportunity to try and go to a big event once in their life. I think those things are magical. They're intimidating, but I think it's one of those. It's like Disney World. You should try and go once in your life, just to see if it's for you and have a go on those things. I think that's really exciting. And there's so much to navigate in those sorts of spaces. My first ever testing conference was a Eurostar, which was incredibly intimidating.
Go big or go home.
Or go big, have a breakdown, and then go home.
Yeah, that also
that's huge.
doesn't work, but yes, does impact you. Yeah.
But then there's like other things you can buy. Like, so I worked in a place where we didn't just test websites, but we had other stuff, and so people could buy Arduinos, kits for testing kits to experiment and run some like tangible stuff to get their hands on. Like, oh, I really want to get this piece of hardware to accelerate some of our learning and such. Like, a lot of that is a real thing as well.
Another thing I would spend that sort of money on is potentially, if it was business based, a bespoke course, bringing someone in and a bespoke course for a particular topic. So therefore everyone can be trained on that particular topic and is specific for the particular company. I think that's really valuable. So if I had that sort of money, then that's possibly something I would look at.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially if you're looking for, say, an entire department or a culture shift that you're trying to implement or anything like that. If you've got the budget and you can pay for those people that's what they do for a living, is to come in and help with those things, then do that. It's life-changing in some cases.
Yeah, I think those are good things. I would love someone to buy me a NVIDIA DGX Spark AI mini supercomputer type thing for my desktop, if that's just within budget. I think it's about $4,500 or something. Or just
that's
like
a real thing, because sometimes it could be kit could provide you more value. It could, back to the quality being the removal of unnecessary friction. There could be something you've been dealing with for a long time in your setup that's rubbish. It could be get a new hub.
AWS credits, for example, so that you could do things within the cloud or Google or other
AI friendly. Get some sort of like enterprise account on one of those tools.
No, I think there's lots of stuff like that, and there is, as you said, training courses. There is lots of more certification type things. Some specialist ones are quite expensive because they do it for like 8 people, and then they charge you a bomb. So like security courses and things are generally the ones I've seen that have made me shed a tear.
And I know when it comes to certifications, there are some that you can just assume that you're going to fail it the first time. Like the pass rate is so low. So being able to take that larger budget and say, I'm going to take it the first time here, and if I don't pass and get my cert, there's usually a discount that comes along with, oh, well, if you do it again in 6 months, then it's less. So being able to kind of plan ahead and snowball that helps a little bit.
Again, it depends on the context that we're talking about a little bit. But another one that's quite expensive is kind of like boot camp systems. So if you want a career change or something like that, usually sometimes it's a promise of a job, sometimes it's commitment to work for someone like that, sometimes it's a pay a fee to kind of go through this 6-week course type boot camp. And that fee can be several £1,000s. I think within our budget, depends on the companies and things like that. But they're often more used for changing careers. So let's say you want to become, I don't know, a data scientist, or if you want something like that, you might go into boot camp, or test engineering, or something of that ilk, where you can go into boot camp, work with people to do things. Some of them are apprenticeships. There's different models, but there's lots of employers out there that do it for free as part of you're joining us. We'll train you for 6 weeks, and then we'll sell you as a resource to other companies and make money back that way. Some of them are actually saying, no, you can just pay us some money. We'll put you through the course. At the end of it, you should be able to get a job as a tester or an equivalent. So those sorts of things are when you've got budget. But again, your company isn't going to probably pay for that unless they've agreed to a career change and you're on a redundancy route and all sorts of complexities. But it's something that's out there if you had £5,000 for your learning, if that makes sense. If you want to invest in yourself, there's all sorts of things you can do like that.
Do we want to leave a message to employers about
train your staff,
their people?
If you expect staff to continue to be able to be at the top of the range and be good at doing things, then you have to invest in them as people. And that may be money, it's certainly time, because without time, money doesn't make a difference. But you need to invest if you want people. And right now, we are going through an AI revolution. If you want people to utilize that in a sensible, safe way, and to be quality, the implementations you use, not just chaotic, then you need to upskill the people in your team who are going to be validating these things, be it testers, data scientists, or other things, in the tools, the ways of working that does it. So invest in time, invest in people, invest in training.
Every survey that goes out when people ask what they want, it always comes down to development. People don't want to be static in their job. They don't want to get burnout. They don't want to just be passed over for that promotion. They want to learn and grow. And so keeping your employees happy comes with keeping them well trained.
And I would echo that. The same thing. If you're coming from a company, make sure that you do invest in your people. You can make it relevant to what the company are needed, whatever, but it is absolutely giving the employees time to be able to do it, and feel safe that they can do it, rather than putting pressure on, get this out. Oh, you're going on a course. Be open, honest, and make sure that the training is relevant both to you, the company, but also don't judge them for going on the training.
I'm going to reveal something on the opposite side to all this. So like we talked about time, money, budget, and all the rest of it. I've worked in places where the budget's never been the problem. Oddly, it's the people trying to spend it has been the problem. I've had to give money back from training budgets multiple times, to David's point, because the employees haven't felt able to ask for the money, haven't felt had the time off, and they've had to cancel things. Oh, we've got a major release next week. It's like, well, okay, that was probably forecastable. Or Scrum, we're releasing every 2 weeks anyway, so yes, there's always a release. Those sorts of logics. But having to give people the faith, the trust, where I've recently worked, having to change the culture to actually it's okay to learn was quite a big thing, to actually get more of that budget spent. The area of tests spent more than, let's just say, some of the other areas, because we tried to influence people that it was okay to learn. And that often comes by leaders setting an example.
Yes, and it is a double-edged sword. If you, as an employee, have been begging for time and budget to train, and then you don't, you're going to lose it very quickly. So
yeah, I stop asking for as much money next year, and so on. That's what happens.
Yep.
We could talk training. I certainly could for a lifetime. So sorry for consuming all the oxygen, people. We will wrap it up here, though. Otherwise, we'll go on. But if you do have questions on learning, development, want to ask about the resources, feel free to reach out to us contact us at testingpeers.com. Always interested in hearing from us, from listeners, always wanting to help basically as much as we can, people. We have got a conference, as I did blatantly plug throughout. Other conferences are available. It is in Nottingham in March in 2026. So if you want to know more about it, feel free to go to testingpeerscon.com. There's more information on it there. It's the 12th of March in Nottingham, UK. 30 quid at the moment. Well, yeah, 30 quid basically ticket. So not a bad price for a ticket for a full day conference. Come along by all means. But thank you to our guests, our special guest Tara, and to our familiar faces and voices, more likely on a podcast, Chris and David, and myself. Thank you for joining us.
For now, it's goodbye from the Testing Peers.
Goodbye.